Hello,
There's Dan.
I am Dan. This is Stugotz, and we were very excited about your movie because it looks totally terrifying. I didn't have you for a horror guy. Jessica, you've seen it. How scared were you? Stugotz hates these movies. They terrify him.
It's the head spinning around in circles. That's what it is.
It was very scary. I watched it right before bedtime, which is always what they say is the best time to watch scary movies. So, Russell, I was wondering when you saw the script for this movie, is this something that you thought, all right, now I have to read all of Father Amorth. He's the LeBron James of exorcisms. I have to go read all of his books to prep for this now?
Well, not all of them, but at least the first two. That's what actually fascinated me, because when I first read the script, I thought somebody had made up the job chief exorcist for the Vatican. I didn't think that was a real thing. And then I looked into it. It was like, oh, it is a real thing. And then I started to sort of chase down Amorth himself and the things that he'd experienced in his life and what he'd achieved. And it was a very rich catalog. I think there's 12 books. There's also, hundreds of articles he wrote for intra-church magazines, and he lived a very interesting life. So that's what actually got me interested, was the man.
Did you believe in the spirit world before this, and then you start reading and are like, no, this is a real thing, and these stories are horrifying, and I believe differently than I did before I took this part?
Is that a question, Dan, or is this a statement?
It is a question.
I was thinking the same thing.
My experience is not that at all. My experience comes from a point of view of objectivity, and I look at this thing as a piece of entertainment, and there's other processes involved, and I have my sort of thoughts about those as well, but one of the key things in my gig, man, is you never lose that objectivity. You've got to sort of be back from what you're doing a little bit, in order to get the result that you want. It's not just something that you dive into, you give everything over to, and then you fully take in the beliefs of everything that you're doing, because that would be very unhealthy.
You've done horror before of any kind? Anything attracted you to horror?
I did The Mummy with Tom Cruise. That was like 2016. But the thing is man, I got to look for fresh ground. You know what I mean? I can't do my job and just keep doing the same character or the same type of character in the same place. I've never done that, So for me, something like this is an area that I hadn't been into. And look, as I said, it was the character of Amorth and the things that he experienced. You're talking about a young man who grew up in Modena in Italy, which is where Ferrari came from. At 17, he believed deeply that he had received a calling to serve God. So he went to become a priest, but they told him to go away because he was too young. Go and get some life experience. Now, the period of time we're talking about is the early 40s, and so the world is at war. And this young man who has received a calling to serve God now finds himself as a resistance fighter, with a gun in his hand, fighting the fascists and shooting to kill. He goes through that war experience. He gets wounded during the process of it, comes out of that and goes into law school, gets his law degree, comes out of that and begins working as a journalist. And at that point in time, a decade later, he goes back to Rome and says, I still feel this calling. And the priest that he talked to said, well, now it's perfect. Now you've lived some life. You have some experience of yourself where you can actually really help people. So then he goes to theology school, is a journalist, joins the Paulus, which is about communication, produces radio, produces television, writes hundreds and hundreds of intra-church magazine articles. And it's not until he's 60 years old that he gets a tap on the shoulder by a guy called Father Candido, who he barely knew. And he says, Gabriele, now you're going to change what you're doing. Now you have to come and be an exorcist, And that led to 36 years of service in that job. I've read a lot about Gabriele Amorth. I believe in Gabriele Amorth. And so therefore, I believe that his first person remembrances and memoirs of what he's actually done, have to have a certain validity.
Russell, you mentioned Tom Cruise, and I'm wondering if you agree with me. Did Tom Cruise save movies with Maverick?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if you're in that camp. Tom Cruise has been saving the movie industry for like 40 years. You know,
Exactly.
I love his on his Twitter page. I think it says Tom Cruise running in movies since 1981. He's look, you know, I've known Tommy a long time, and I know the sort of effort he puts into stuff. And I mean, look, man, he's just he's a special creature, isn't he? He does things that mortal man can't do.
I grew up going to Catholic school. I've been to Catholic school my entire life, so I feel like I can say this. But I find
Great, let's get a
Catholicism
drink
to
later.
be yeah. Yes, please. I find Catholicism to be the spookiest of the religions. Is there something about the Catholic aesthetic that you think lends itself to making a horror film like this?
Well, there's a lot of hierarchy, isn't there? And there's a lot of structure, and there's a lot of open doorways, but there's also a lot of closed ones too. So yeah, I do think you know, the more you make your organization have channels of secrecy, the more questions you create. You know, so I didn't have that sort of childhood, the one that you described. You know, I didn't have a religious family. I didn't go to church schools. You know, it was my own inquisitiveness when I was in my early teens, like 12, 13, where I actually would on weekends go to different church services. You know, I went to Church of England and Anglican services. I went to Catholic services just to see what was going on. You know, so I have you know, an objectivity to that. You know, it's for me, formalized religion is kind of like the middleman in the deal. You know, because if you're saying that God exists and God is real and God is full and total and complete, then God doesn't need you to have a middleman between you and God. You know, so it's like the person that steps in the middle of the deal between the producer and the user and says, "I'll take a little bit of that," and I don't really know. You know, obviously, for all the cynicism that you can have about religious organizations, you also have to stack that up against the good that they do and the community that they create, and the connection they create for people. You know?
Russell, at the end of this, Stugotz wants to play a game with you. We're going to unleash a game on you. But if I may, I'm just going to ask you a handful of questions about your career and where it ranks in terms of your fear performing, singing in an epic musical, being that person who tries to go to that range. Where does that rank in terms of fears you've had when attacking a thespian conquest?
Sorry, Dan, what's the question? What are you asking me?
I'm
How
asking
scary
you,
was it being Inspector Javert?
Les Miserables, the singing in a musical, I would imagine would be scary.
I like you, Russell.
No, that was one of the most beautiful on-set experiences I've had in my career, actually. You know, that particular group of people, you know, Anne Hathaway, Amanda Seyfried, Samantha Barks, Hugh Jackman, of course, you know, that cast, Eddie Redmayne, you know, it was a great group of people and a great energy. And as tricky and long as some of those days were, and the thing that we were being asked to do, you know, where most of the dialogue, or all of the dialogue in that movie is recitative. So you're sort of doing this, you know, strange version of singing, talking, you know. But, you know, I love that experience, man, you know, being surrounded by music like that all the time, because that's where I come from. I come from stage musicals, you know. It was a stage musical that got me my first film audition. So, you know, I started working as an actor when I was 6 years old. My mum and dad were location caterers, so I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And it kind of caught something in me. So I worked a little bit as a kid on TV shows, you know, when I was 6, when I was 8, when I was 12, just little bits. And then, you know, by the time I'm in my mid-teens, I'm in bands, you know, and playing in nightclubs and touring. And then an opportunity came up from those nightclub shows I was doing to actually do the stage musical Grease. And then a few years later, I did the Rocky Horror Show, and then that ended up being quite a long association. I did that for about 416 performances. And then I moved back from New Zealand to Australia, where I'd actually spent my formative years, and then moved to New Zealand for the late teens. You know, came back into Australia and really focused in on putting acting as the priority above music. But by that time, man, I'd had, you know, a number of records come out, and I still remain connected to a touring band all the way through until 2003. You know, we toured America, actually. You know, we did full houses all over the place in 2001. You know, so, you know, being in a cast of a musical is not a scary place for me at all. It's a very comfortable place and a very familiar place. You know, I think one of the problems possibly on that film was you have, you know, what's required of a feature film and what's required of a stage musical are very different. So you have two groups of people on that set. You have, you know, backstage type of thing. You have musical theater people and you have film people. And sometimes the musical theater people, you know, don't understand the rigor of, you know, that actual making of a film. So I found myself oddly acting as the policeman on behalf of the cast in that situation where, you know, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't mind you telling me, but, you know, Hugh, for various reasons, wanted to, you know, change his singing teacher and who warmed him up in the morning and stuff like that. And, you know, there was other arrangements in place, and on his behalf, I stepped in and had that conversation and just got him into a place which was better for the performance. So my memory of that film is wonderful, you know. However, the end result of that film, you know, I do understand when, you know, people are critical, but they, you know, it's just one of those things, man. In feature film, you've got to stand back, you do your gig, and you trust that people understand what you're doing. And there's an element to what I was doing in that film that I don't think was really utilized in post-production. But, you know, I did a version of The Confrontation, for example. I did a live version of that with a guy called Jeff Layton, who played Jean Valjean for about 18 years. And that recording is just, you know, sitting in the studio, like, you know, going all the way through the song. And I think you can find it on YouTube or whatever.
I've seen it.
And you've seen it, right? We'll see, you know, that's what I do. You know?
The Pope's Exorcist. It is in theaters April 14th. We're going to get to this game in a second, but what a hell of a run, man. Gladiator, Insider, and Beautiful Mind, 99 to 2001. Like, that's a real ass kicking. That's 3.
So you don't think Master and Commander, whether it's 10 Academy Award nominations counts? You don't think?
I'm just saying. Cinderella Man 2, wildly underrated.
Body of Lies, my favorite though. I mean,
cool.
Yeah.
What is the movie that people ask you most about or are most curious about, the performance?
Well, funnily enough, this is not the first time I've answered this question this week. And, you know, I know your assumption is that it's Gladiator. And it just depends on where I am in the world. It really does, because it can be very, very different, you know. And I've been really, really lucky, man, because, you know, I can have conversations about Gladiator or conversations about Beautiful Mind or Master and Commander. A lot of the time, Cinderella Man comes up. A lot of the time, you know, when you're talking to younger people, lately, obviously, you know, Thor, Love and Thunder comes up. But, you know, I get this movie I did with Ryan Gosling a while ago, this comedy called Nice Guys. You know, that comes up a lot. You know, American Gangster comes up a lot. You know, one that comes up continuously with men of my own age, when you think they're going to talk to you about some sort of more action-based movie, they want to talk about that romantic comedy I made with Ridley called A Good Year, you know? And the thing is too, man, LA Confidential comes up a lot too. So, you know, I've been very lucky. I've made another one that comes up is the thing called The Next 3 Days, you know, and that came out in 2010 or something, but only last year or the year before it managed to get itself to #1 on Netflix, you know. So, yeah, I've been very lucky. I've made a bunch of movies that people find interesting.
All right, we're gonna play a game here to finish this off here. It's complicated, Russell, so stay with me. It's called Crow or No.
Right.
Okay? So crow is yes and no is no. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Method acting. Crow or no?
Well, you develop your own method. So somebody else's method that's not about me. I never went to any kind of formal acting school. But certainly, what you learn when you're in the theater is you have to break down what you're doing because, you have to know which door you're coming in and out of and stuff. So there is, a technical methodology that you can apply. I work between action and cut, and there is nothing else in my life between action and cut.
Russell, forgive me.
We've talked a lot about.
Forgive me for interrupting you. My apologies. It's just Stugotz wants you to play the game differently.
Yeah.
He wants a crow.
I only have like 4 minutes to go here,
He wants
Russell.
a crow
Right.
or a no, and you're offering all the correct nuance. You're doing this correctly.
I
but that's not
appreciate
the-
it. If I had more time.
And that, Dan, is crow. You see?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Forgive me. It's just I think he's got a few of these, and we don't
Yes.
want to waste too much more of your time.
All right.
So,
Crow
well,
or
you
no?
know, Dan, if you'd shortened your questions,
I know
earlier,
you're so
Yes,
right.
you're right.
I'm such
You're
an
right.
asshole.
You
You're
are
so
right.
So
Yes.
right. So
Yep.
right.
100%. People standing the entire time at a concert. Crow or no?
What's the gig?
Yours.
One of your shows.
Oh, one of my shows?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Do you want just the music or do you want some stories as well? Because I'm going to tell some stories. You need to
I
see
want
it.
crow or no. I mean, that's all I want, Russell.
He's trying to bother us. Go
know.
ahead.
I
Go
love
through
it.
your questions. Go through
All
the
right.
rest of them.
All right. You played two boxers, I believe, in movies. So you're a boxing fan, I assume. Jake Paul, crow or no?
Well, I have a very complex relationship with boxing, Stu.
Okay. Crow or no?
But I think, do I think that Jake Paul has shown an immense amount of courage? Yeah, I do. But you know those charts they put up on the social media, and the one is fuck around and the other one's find out.
Yes.
But
Crow or no?
I think he's shown a lot of skill and a lot of courage. I think, it's been interesting to watch.
Can you exorcise the demon in Stugotz's throat before we leave? He's got this thing every time he talks. Sometimes like a little phlegm comes out.
Yeah, well, that's the heaters. He can relate. He has smoked before.
Well,
Morons.
I actually think the tone of your voice is perfect for
Thank
this
you.
situation.
Thank you very much, Russell.
gotta
you
go.
and I
One
are
more-
kindred spirits.
One
man.
more. We got to get him out of here. He's got to go. The Pope's Exorcist, April 14th.
Okay, morons in sports media that claim the sport of soccer is dead. Crow or no?
The sport of football.
You're right. Listen, I host a podcast called God Bless Football,
Oh,
so I'm
for
a
the
huge
love of
fan.
God.
The globally known
Oh.
sport of football
Yeah.
For the love
is
of God.
in
Crow or
no
no?
way has in no way died in any shape or form.
Yes,
It is
that's right.
growing in
Thank you.
popularity.
That's right.
And,
That's correct. What do you mean, thank you? That's not.
I only have 100 more. I mean, he's
the-
totally
the Po-
bleeping with me.
the-
I love him for
The
that.
Pope's
I mean,
Exorcist, April 14th. Thank you, Russell Crowe.
didn't
We
get,
appreciate your
Messi,
time, sir.
Messi better than Pele in. I didn't get that.
Stu, we'll do this as a separate podcast of our own.
Yes.
Stupidity.
Yes,
He always
yes, I would love to
wins.
have you on. Yes, we'll have a couple of heaters. All right,
Good on you, mate.
all right, man.
See you, Dan.